Good morning. It's Wednesday, April the 20th, and this is The Drill. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare, the Pledge of Allegiance, and the Star-Spangled Banner, we will have no free lunch, the collapse of parenting, and Cicada, chapter 19, I believe it is, from the book Tales from My Bicentennial Year. All that and more when I get back. Thank you. And now the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare for April the 20th. Take possession of the gate of the enemy. Because my servant Abraham was willing to serve me wholeheartedly, even to the sacrifice of his own son, I established my covenant with him and his descendants for eternity. And I promise that his descendants shall possess the gate of their enemies. This promise is for you and for your descendants. Serve me with your whole heart, and I will plant your seed in all the nations of the earth, and you and your descendants will possess the gates of their enemies. You will use the battering ram of my holiness to destroy the gates of the enemy and to overthrow the kingdoms of darkness. The gates of hell will have no power to prevail against my servants, and I will give you the keys of the kingdoms of earth. Genesis chapter 22, verses 14 through 18, Ezekiel chapter 21, verse 22, Matthew chapter 16, verse 18. Through your son, prayer declaration, through your Son, Jesus, let me possess the gate of the enemy. I release battering rams against the gates of hell, and they shall not prevail against me. Open to me the gates of righteousness that I may enter in. Let the gates of my life and the city be open to the King of glory. Amen. And that was the Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare for April the 20th. Thank you. Who is the true conservative? He is religious and realistic. He is the person that understands that culture is the foundation for politics. He acknowledges a benevolent universe. He is patriotic and uses common sense. He makes judgments, refuses to speculate, speaks clearly and definitively, and is not afraid to say no. He's open-minded, asking why rather than why not. He is consistent, credible, and influential, not ashamed of his existence, unafraid to learn or correct his mistakes. He is a normal American. Thank you, thank you. What is the true conservative strategy for defeating socialists in this country? Number one, we must properly define conservatism. Then we must organize all potential conservatives under that definition. Once organized, we must dominate American culture. Dominating American culture means that we must rid ourselves of all the various cults the left has foisted upon us in this country. We rid ourselves of the left-wing cults by promoting value. What are the universal values? Number one, life. Number two, privacy. Number three, time. Number four, sanity. Number five, productivity. We defeat promiscuity by promoting family and privacy. Socialists must be driven from positions of power. And since it is lefty counterculture that provides the foundation for their political success, true conservatives must resist left-wing counterculture and promote normal American culture. By changing our culture, we will change our politics. And we change the culture by getting married, creating a family, and raising our children. Thank you, thank you. What are the tactics in support of the strategy to rid America of socialist influence? The long-term tactics are to be a true conservative, talk like a conservative, act like a conservative, dress like a conservative, think like a conservative. The short-term tactics are rhetorical. True conservatives need to win all of the arguments. True conservatives need to defeat the useful idiots on the left that populate their households, workplaces, and churches. That means don't be neutral. Don't try to prove a negative. Don't take their word for it, and ask lots of questions. The useful idiots are the people that simply repeat the latest talking points. Thank you, thank you. What are the true conservative political priorities? Number one, a constitutional amendment banning abortion throughout the country. Number two, make nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons obsolete. Number three, the immediate decertification of all public employee unions. Number four, the immediate assignment of criminal and civil liability to all government regulators. Number five, the immediate repeal of the so-called Patriot Act. Number six, the immediate repeal of all dictator laws. Number seven, the reinstatement of writs of outlawry. Number eight, government-sponsored recalls, ballot initiatives, and referendums. Number nine, a flexible minimum wage. Number 10, means-tested health care. And number 11, the immediate and permanent prohibition of investment banking by any office holder. Back in a minute. Thank you, thank you. What are the true conservative cultural priorities? Number one, bring back not-for-profit news. Number two, defeat the cult of promiscuity with the promotion of privacy. Number three, defeat the cult of neutrality with the effective use of propaganda. Number four, defeat the cult of personality by emphasizing character. Number five, defeat the cult of imagination, psychology, and Hollywood with religion and research. Number six, defeat the cult of reinvention by admitting one's mistakes. Number seven, defeat the cult of death, abortion, infanticide, and assisted suicide. Back in a minute. Thank you, thank you. The biggest mistakes that right-wing talk show hosts make. Number one, they are neutral. Number two, they fail to correct their mistakes. Three, they demoralize their audiences. Number four, they contradict themselves. Back in a minute. Thank you, thank you. Left-wing, right-wing vocabulary. The left says, going forward. The right says, from now on. The left says, homeless. The right says, squatter. The left says, migrant. The right says, fugitive. The left says, eliminate. The right says, reduce. Thank you, thank you. And now There's No Free Lunch by David Bahnsen. Quote, nothing is so permanent as a temporary government program, unquote, Milton Friedman. Our understanding of government spending will go a long way if we first understand this. Passing new spending bills in Congress has one level of difficulty. Getting rid of some spending program is almost an impossibility. The reason is entrenched in the reality of government programs themselves. Once a program is passed, there is someone somewhere living off the benefits of other people's money. Bureaucrats, lobbyists, and other seedy characters, yes, but also constituents, voting constituents. Government programs, by definition, in one form or another, involve a transfer of funds from one party to another party. That second party, the recipient, has no interest in letting that end and is perfectly capable of building an apparatus that will make it nearly impossible to end. And that was There's No Free Lunch. Thank you, thank you. And now, another part of Chapter 3 from the book, The Collapse of Parenting. In Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom, I've seen kids who won't sit still and be quiet, just as in the United States. In the United States today, the teacher is likely to write a note to the parents or make a phone call saying something like, I'm concerned about Justin. He has great difficulty sitting still and being quiet. I think you should have him evaluated. The parents dutifully take their son to the doctor, who says, let's try Adderall and see if it helps. Sure enough, the medication helps. Once he is medicated, Justin sits still and is quiet. Everybody's happy. In the previous chapter, when we considered the growing proportion of kids who are overweight, I mentioned that the problem of heavy-set kids and declining physical fitness now seems to be pervasive across all developed countries. But in this chapter, we're talking about mental health, the diagnosis of psychiatric disorder, and the prescription of powerful psychiatric medications. The sequence of events just described, let's try Adderall or another drug and see if it helps, simply does not happen outside North America. I'm not saying that kids are always better behaved elsewhere. I've seen plenty of kids in Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom bouncing and making buzzing noises when they're supposed to be sitting still. But the teacher does not refer the child for psychiatric evaluation. Instead, the teacher, who is typically far more confident of her authority than an American teacher would be, tells the child in a firm voice that she has had quite enough of that silliness, thank you, and it is high time for it to stop. Imagine an 8 or 10-year-old boy who misbehaves. He talks back to teachers. He is deliberately spiteful and vindictive. He doesn't listen. He seems to have little or no self-control. 30 years ago, perhaps even 20 years ago, the school counselor or principal might have said to the parent, your son is disrespectful. He is rude. He exhibits no self-control. You need to teach him some basic rules about civilized behavior if he is going to stay at this school. Today, it's much less common for an American school counselor or administrator to speak so bluntly to a parent. Instead, the counselor or administrator will suggest a consultation with a physician or a psychologist. And the physician or psychologist will look at the reports from the school and talk about oppositional defiant disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder or pediatric bipolar disorder. What's the difference between saying your son is disrespectful and saying your son may meet criteria for a psychiatric disorder? There's a big difference. When I say your son is disrespectful, the burden of responsibility is on you, the parent, and your child. With that responsibility comes the authority to do something about the problem. But when I say your son may meet the criteria for psychiatric disorder, then the burden of responsibility shifts away from the parent and the child to the prescribing physician and indeed to the whole burgeoning medical psychiatric counseling complex. And the reasonable next question from the parents is not, what should we do to change this behavior, but rather, should he begin taking a medication? The medications work. They do change the child's behavior. That's what I find so scary. These medications are being used as a means of behavior modification to an extent almost unimaginable outside North America. These are powerful medications. The most popular medications for ADHD are prescription stimulants. All these medications work in the same way. They increase the action of dopamine at synapses in the brain. Dopamine is a key neurotransmitter in the nucleus accumbens, the brain's motivational center. When researchers administer these medications to laboratory animals, they find that these medications damage the nucleus, and similar findings have been recently reported in humans. The result of long-term use of medications such as Adderall may be a girl or boy who is more likely to be disengaged and less motivated to achieve in the real world. We don't know for sure, not yet. As I just noted, most, though not all of the relevant research has been conducted in laboratory animals rather than humans. It takes a long time to achieve conclusive proof in medicine. As a parent, you have to make a decision in the face of uncertainty. In the face of that uncertainty, if you must use a medication, I recommend avoiding those potentially dangerous stimulants and instead using safer non-stimulant medications for ADHD, such as Strattera. I have no affiliation with and I accept no payments from the drug companies that manufacture these or any other medications. And that was another part of Chapter 3, from which is the chapter titled Why Are Our Kids on Medication? And from the book The Collapse of Parenting. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Chapter 19 from the book Tales from My Bicentennial Year by Michael Buell. This is a story of a family growing up in Gansevoort, New York in the Adirondacks in 1975. Chapter 19 is titled Cicada. Thanks to my sledding accident, I'd pretty much slept through Christmas and New Year's with a concussion. I even got to miss the first few weeks of school after it started back up again. The last few days got a little boring, and I suppose I was no easy task for my mom either, but at least on this Monday I was headed back to school. Heck, I had been out of it for so long it seemed like the first day back at school after summer break. I made it to my class, and Mrs. Martin actually looked happy to see me. She kept asking me how I felt and if I needed anything. Was I all caught up on my work, or did I need to go over anything? It was pretty nice to be getting all the attention from her. Mike C. just kept looking at me and laughing. He would point at the door and ask me if I was going to go through the doorway or would I try to take out the wall with my head. After catching up with just about everybody, I finally made it to my desk, which was all the way in the back row next to Mike C. From there, I could survey the whole room. I was right in the middle of the back row, so I could get people on both sides laughing. Most importantly, I could keep pretty good eye contact with Mrs. Martin. I liked this because she would kind of look at me for help, I guess. Help, meaning, was everybody done with the homework? Was anybody needing help? Did the class get what she was saying? She was not always sure and would give me a look, and I kind of knew what she wanted me to do. Like the time Jake Smothers was not getting what she was saying about math. I could tell he was clueless. He was hemming and hawing and searching all through his papers. He was lost. But when Mrs. Martin asked everyone if they were ready to go on, Jake nodded his head, yes, right along with the rest of us. Mrs. Martin looked at me with those eyes, kind of asking me, are we really ready? So I asked her, like it was me that needed help, if she could explain it again, which she did, and then Jake seemed to catch on. It had been snowing for like 2 weeks straight, and I think the high temperature was minus 200 degrees or something. But today the sun was finally out, and with the row of windows we had in class, with the sun and the snow outside, I was almost blinded when I looked up to scan the row of kids that sat by the window. I was looking for Maria and Tina, who were always good for note passing and to get laughing. Maria smiled back at me and turned around, back towards the front. Sitting right behind Maria was Tina, and for the life of me I could not get her attention. I did not really need her attention for anything. I just wanted it. I started by a couple of loud whisper yells. "Tina, Tina!" I struggled to whisper yell over to her. No luck. I had a rubber band in my desk, so I put one end on my finger and held the other end back with my thumb and finger, and then pulled back, lined up her back, and let her rip. The rubber band went like a bullet, zipping past several people on its way to the intended target. Snap! It struck her square in the back. Tina, being used to being pestered by Mike C. and me, did not, thank God, start screaming out loud. She simply turned around, smiled at me, and pointed up front. I could not make out who or what she was pointing at. Then I saw her, the sun glowing off her long, black, shiny hair. She had kind of a halo effect surrounding her as she turned around to Tina. Tina started pointing at her and smiling, said, "Hi." I was breathless. Her smile lit up the room. Tina tapped her on the shoulder and pointed her in my direction. She waved at me. It was like an angel was floating the room, smiling and waving at me. All I could see was her glowing face surrounded by the sunlight. Her eyes seemed to be focused just on me. All I could hear was a song coming from the back of my mind. Baby, baby, falling in love, I'm falling in love again. Baby, baby, falling in love, I'm falling in love again. Michael? Michael? Are you with us? Yelled Mrs. Martin. Who is that? Was all I could muster. You look a little lost. Is your head okay? She yelled back to me. I see you have at least noticed our new student, she said. The rest of the class was now staring at me. Tina, thank God, broke the ice. She piped up and asked Mrs. Martin if she would like to introduce Mike to the new student. Yes, Tina, go ahead. Let's get this over with and focus back on our day, she said with a little note of anger in her voice. Tina stood up and she and the new girl walked over to my desk. I almost fell out of my chair trying to stand up and be introduced. Tina said, "Cicada, this is Mike, the funny boy we have been telling you about. Mike, this is Cicada, the new girl in school. She just moved here over Christmas from North Carolina." I know it sounds crazy, but I felt like I already knew all about her. I felt like I had known her for years. She was all smiles and had the prettiest eyes. I just stood there looking at her, staring at her, actually. After a few minutes of me just staring at her, probably drooling down my shirt, Cicada said, "Tina, does this boy know manners? He's just standing there. I thought you said he was funny." Tina looked at me, pinched my arm, and said, "Aren't you going to say hi or something? Aren't you going to introduce yourself to her?" Back in a minute. Thank you, thank you. "I already know her," I said. They both looked at me very quizzically. Maria now had joined the other two. All three of them looked at me and said, "How do you already know her?" "I already know her because she's the girl of my dreams," I said. "Ew!" All three of them screamed and ran away back to their seats. Mike C. just sat there shaking his head at me, looking absolutely disgusted. Mrs. Martin, who, when I said it, was drinking coffee, dropped her coffee cup on the desk when I said it, looked up at me and said, "That may have been the cheesiest thing I have ever heard. I expected more gentlemanly things from you." I know I just said something stupid, but I also know I had to find out more about her. I yelled out to her, "Wow, North Carolina, that's pretty far away. What kind of name is Cicada? It's a pretty name, but what does it mean?" I was a babbling idiot now. I was falling over every word. I was red-faced, humiliated. I was taken with her. Cicada, upon hearing my blathering idiot questions, stood up, walked back over to me, and was actually smiling. She tilted her head off to the side and, looking down at her feet instead of me, said, "My real name is Elizabeth, but my daddy nicknamed me Cicada when I was just a baby." "Okay, but what about your name?" "Why Cicada?" I had to know at this point. "Because a girl like me only comes around once in a generation," my daddy says, "and my dad likes the way I sang when I was a baby," said Cicada. "Okay, but," I stammered, still not understanding why the name Cicada. "You dummy," said Tina. "A cicada is like a cricket, except that a cicada only comes out once every 20 years and sings songs to find its husband. Wow, I thought, what a name to go with that girl. I had to know everything about her right now, but there was Mrs. Martin trying to get class going. We all returned to our seats. I sat down and tried desperately for the rest of the day to get a glimpse of Cicada. Maria was giving me dirty looks all day. Mike C. kept shaking his head in disgust. Mrs. Martin even looked a little mad at me, no longer smiling at me and welcoming me back to the class. It didn't matter to me what these people thought. Cicada was looking back and smiling at me the whole day. And that's the end of chapter 19, called Cicada, of the book Tales from My Bicentennial Year by Mike Buell. And next time, chapter 20, Fire. Back in a minute. Thank you. Who is the socialist? He is the man that is spiritual. He's the man that seeks consensus. He's subjective, petty, and small, taking everything in life personally. He's outrageous, boring, and rude. He pretends to be a leader and a change agent. He pretends that he's your friend. He is sly, cunning, and deceptive. He dresses, acts, and speaks like a slob. He is informal and terminally unique. He is childish and pretends that he knows nothing. He has no conscience and pretends that might makes right and that the ends justify the means. He is impulsive and rationalizes his behavior. He is deterministic, blaming others for his mistakes. He is skeptical, demanding that others solve his problems. His unreasonableness and irresponsibility make him a bad role model, bad father, brother, family member, friend, and a bad person, period. So if you think that you can be friends with a socialist, think again. Thank you. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today, bidding adios to all of the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers, and reminding you to listen to the John and Ken Show on KFI AM 640, Monday through Friday from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Also, KFI needs to bring back Brian Suits and his show, The Dark Secret Place. Hashtag bring back Brian Suits. Until next time, be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.